Almost seven people I know.
Well, I like to think that, but yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Bit sporadic.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. You're recording already. Right. So hopefully it'll work this time because I remember last time we had all the dramas and whatever with it.
Now, what it is I've got a little bit of OCD when it comes to my phone and my computer. You'll probably laugh
Mhm.
at this. So I hate having numbers showing up on my phone, so I have to clear everything.
Yeah.
And my desktop, I can't have it like super busy. So what I do is I grab everything and I drop it into the bin, the stuff that I can't see. And I had about four different podcasts that I edited, including yours that was on there, because it blocks up all my memory.
Yeah.
And just not thinking about it, I dragged and dropped everything in, and uh and then
Uh-huh.
he cleared my cache, and I was like,
You're not the only
no.
one who's got OCD about numbers. I have to have things on an even number. I have to have the radio on an even number, TV volume on an even number. And it's funny because it's somebody else's thing and somebody else told me about it and now I can't do anything but have the same thing. So it's like these little OCD things like have a ripple effect. So yeah, cool. Well, let's get on with it, I guess, if you want, if you're recording. And I can't
Yeah.
remember how I did it last time. I've done so many podcasts between our last one and this one. So I'll just let you fire
I
away.
know. Well, look, we're rolling with it. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Ads. It's so nice to be here again. I wore my Waka Waka hoodie specially, and it is just turned properly winter in Basingstoke. So I was like, yeah, dig out the proper hoodies at the minute.
Well, I feel a little bit let down, and I'll tell you why. Is because this is the second time we've done this, and last time you were wearing your Royal Marines hoodie.
A Royal Marine City, yeah, that Rick Cole sent me, yeah. So I do, yeah, I end up with a para hoodie over the summer, and then Rick Cole, one of the Marine guys, sent me a lovely pink Marine hoodie, and yeah, and then after I got sent that one, and I posted it on Twitter. I got hundreds of messages from people going, right, we're sending you an engineers one now, we're sending you an logistics one, we're sending you a RAF regiment one. So I was like, no, no, no. So I had to stop it somewhere. But so I've gone with Foursquare UK today because they put out a nice post about me yesterday.
It's quite funny, really, because you've become quite in demand, haven't you? I've been whether social media is a smoke and mirror kind of thing, because sometimes it can be. You know, people make out that they're a lot busier than they are, but you genuinely seem to have kind of everything's ramped up for you, which is a positive thing.
Absolutely. I mean, the book came out, which I'm sure we're going to come on to later, but the book came out in September last year. And I kind of just bubbled away in the background for a couple of months. And it seemed to be from like January this year that it started to build. And I think that's because it takes like, there's a lag time where everyone buys the book because it's all exciting. And I think the first run must have mostly been my friends. But then it takes a while for everyone to read it. And then hopefully my book, the content of it speaks for itself. So after people had read it, that's when people started to kind of really start to follow my story and kind of, because it's very open and honest about mental health struggles and whatnot. And it's kind of just keeps snowballing from there. So you're right, like August was nice and quiet, but I have just been mentally busy since then. But yeah, I'm still loving it. I still pinch myself every day that I'm living this wonderful life, considering how close it was to not being wonderful. So I'm very lucky.
I mean, I don't want you to tell me all of your secrets, but do you genuinely do you reach out to people, or is it more of a case that people get in touch with you to come and do the speaking piece of things?
Yeah, no, all of it comes to me. So I've only just about 3 weeks ago employed a marketing company now who are doing a lot of my marketing in and around the book. But all the talks and stuff I do, it seems to be like I do one talk and then two people there go, oh, let's get her for this company, and it's just kind of snowballing. And a lot of the stuff comes off the back of podcasts, like we're doing today. You get people just listen to them and go, oh, I'd love to have Liz along to talk at the company. And I did a few bits on Sky earlier this year. So people see me on Sky News and kind of got me in after a few bits and bobs. So it's really organic at the minute, which I kind of like because it means that every time I do a booking, I kind of am chatting to the people and they've contacted me directly. So they kind of already know a little bit about my story. So that's kind of nice. And I'm registered with some speaking companies. So they kind of get me a few gigs, but the majority of it is just the power of social media, which is quite new to me really, because for a long time I was just a Facebooker girl. When the whole time I was in the forces, it was just nosy book. And now I'm like managing 6 social media platforms on a daily basis. So it's a bit mad.
Yeah, it is nuts, isn't it? I'm very similar to you. I've got my personal account, I've got the podcast account, I've then got my therapy business, and now the breathwork business that I'm just starting up. So trying to manage all those sort of things and also have your own life that isn't a real life really on social media. I think when you come to like that mindful piece, it's really kind of just trying to put it down because it sucks you in like a black vortex or a black hole, doesn't it?
Yeah. And you're right, just the word you said about having your own life in the back that's not on social media. I am very close to living my entire life on social media, and I'm very aware of it at the minute because I don't at the minute. I mean, I'm like sound like a right boring old 41-year-old, but I just don't have a social life at the minute because all of my life is out doing work and stuff. And even I went to a really good event a couple of weeks ago for Healing Military Minds, which was a military ball. But I was one of the guest speakers, so I kind of go, and it was by the end of the night I had about 1,000 new friends. But at the start of the night I didn't know anyone. I kind of go there on my own to do my little talk, and I always end up having a great time. But I'm very bad at like fitting in my own stuff now and just kind of going, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do this weekend. It just doesn't happen at the minute, so I need to be quite aware of that. It's a good point you make.
But that's a good thing though, really. You go to somewhere that you don't really know anybody. But this is kind of one of the things that I wanted to kind of talk to you about. It is the fact that you are doing so much of this stuff at the moment, and it does lead on to other opportunities, like you're saying. But I don't know whether you want to be honest with this or not, because this is kind of like a quite a deep question, really. Is do you enjoy doing it? And the reason why I ask that is because I know what it's like to repeat things over and over again. So when you go to different talks, even though you're telling people about your story and about your life and the challenges that you've overcome, it can almost kind of become you just press and play, right?
Traumatized, yeah. That's such a good question, Anne. So the answer is at the minute, yes, and I do now, but it wasn't always like this. So book came out September. I started the speaking kind of circuit very loosely in January. I've had a full-time job, so I was kind of just going and doing the odd thing at nighttime and kind of trying to promote the book really. And standing on stage and just spilling your heart out about the day you tried to end your life is exactly as you just said, really re-traumatizing. And I hadn't realized at the time, I was just throwing myself at everything, anything that came in and anyone wanted me. I was like, yes, 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 yes. And end of January, I just went into a massive mental hole again. And I was back in with the counselor and whatnot. And it was only then I realized that all I'd been doing for a whole month was just re-traumatizing myself every single day. So I'm much more aware of that now. So kind of February, March, I kind of really tapered it a lot. And then I think I just needed that time to kind of decompress a bit. And then I went limited company doing this talking circuit from about March, April onwards. And now I'm okay at it. I still only allow myself to do 2 big gigs a week because I just think it's not even about the re-traumatizing myself while I'm telling my story. It's more about that constant jogging pace and not giving your brain time to process it because I kind of know what I'm going to say on the stage anymore. I think the main thing I'm getting now is, and I love it, but it's people share their trauma or their stories at the end of the day whenever I've been up on a stage talking. And I always encourage them to do that. I know my story, but I don't know theirs. And I love engaging with people at the end. But that in itself can be quite a lot to take home sometimes because you end up this thing called trauma transference and you end up just driving the whole way back from a talk, thinking about that one person who's been crying on your shoulder at the end of a talk, which I've had a couple of weeks ago. A lady just found me at the end, wanted a quiet space to go and chat to me and just broke down in tears. And she had a lot going on and felt safe enough to tell me. And I didn't know this girl from Eve, she was a complete stranger. And then had another guy reach out to me on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, and he was going to kill himself that night. And he just reached out to me. It unfolded throughout the morning of me having to get the police involved and whatnot because I was so concerned about this guy. And then they managed to get hold of him, and he's getting help now. But I've kind of become this beacon for people, which I'm really privileged to be. But I'm very aware that I kind of taking on other people's stuff. So I just need to always have a day at the end where I can like empty out the bucket a bit. So I'm quite aware of that now.
Ever thought about going to do some like I know we mentioned it before, those trim courses and those trauma courses to be able to deal with it because I mean I don't know what you're qualified in, but I can imagine you're not qualified in
Anything.
trauma and management for people.
No, I used to be a trim instructor, was in the RAF. That was great. And that was in the early days because the Marines were so good at that. You know, you guys brought trim in post, I think it was from the Falklands, wasn't it? Originally, that's where trim was kind of the basis behind trim and the thought thing behind you guys sailing back and the Parasol flying back. But yeah, so I kind of I got the trim practitioner tick really early on in the forces, but never really. We were shockingly bad at it, and that I think the RAF got it as a box ticking exercise, like we're looking after our people because we're getting everyone trim qualified. But actually, in terms of, well, what do we actually do with that now? Like, how do we, you know, when people do genuinely break down, none of us really knew what to do. So so I am a trim, but you're right. I'm going to need to do a mental health first aider course. So I'm hoping to do one of those at some point. The rifles, funny enough, the rifles regiment, they do a lot of courses online now for their guys, so, and girls, and they've invited me along to do some of their free training with them, which would be and they've been hit quite hard with suicide rates since Herrick. So, you know, it's front and foremost in their minds at the minute. So if I can jump on that with them, then that would be really good, because there's nothing better than sitting in a room of like-minded people when you're learning that kind of stuff. So yeah, I need to do more.
Exactly. I think what I need to do is do a little description about you before, you know, we're 5 minutes in and we're just kind of like chuckling along.
Chatting
And
away.
I know some people don't really put stuff into the bios and stuff. So, so you former RAF, Air Chinook, that's not really a thing, is it?
RAF.
RAF Chinook crewman.
Yeah.
A couple of tours in Iraq, 10 tours of Afghanistan. You were the longest serving female Chinook crewman. Do you like the way I look down then to read that off? Because I wrote it down. Yeah,
It's a
I haven't got
mouthful.
the mental capacity to hold things in my head. 17 years of service. And now you're into, or you are a motivational speaker. You wrote a book called Chinook Chick. You've got another one that's on the burner.
Yeah, another one on the way, hopefully. A while
Yeah.
off, yeah.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. And also, you were the winner of Women in Defence for 2023.
Yeah, that was a mad one. Yeah, massive surprise that was. And still feel very unworthy of that.
Didn't you get to some Irish awards recently as well?
That's in 2 weeks' time.
Okay.
So yeah, I won the Women in Defence Award, which was just mad. It was the Blue Light or the Defence Discount Service who run that award, and just someone I didn't even know nominated me for that. So that was a bit crazy. Because I've spent my entire RAF career hiding from the fact that I was one of the only females. I never want to be wheeled out like the token Doris for things like that. So I've always shied away from it. But actually, now that I'm out, I have to. I think retrospectively look back and be quite proud that I was doing that job and kind of hopefully had enough credibility throughout my career just by being good at my job, not wanting to be a fanfared or red carpeted or applauded for being a woman doing it. Because if you go, oh, isn't she good? She's doing it despite the fact she's a woman. It's like saying that you're not capable in the first place. So I always just got my head down and got on with it. So to be recognized at the end of that's quite nice. And I'm off on Monday to Woman of the Year award, which is apparently quite a big thing in London. I think Lorraine off the TV is going to be there and a few other like womany celebrity people. So yeah, I'll have to try and watch my crewman potty mouth on the day and be upstanding female for the day and get my dress and high heels on.
That's amazing.
Quite exciting times at the minute. So yeah, see what happens. Every day is different.
I mean, you've probably been asked this quite a few times, and you know, coming from an all male environment, dominated environment like I did in the Marines, I always kind of struggled in a way because it's that indoctrination you kind of exposed to in the military when it comes to kind of like the people that you work with. And I always found, you know, again, this is I don't mean this to be offensive to anybody, but I always found, especially as a young lad, you know, found it difficult to deal with being told what to do by females because you're in that male-dominated environment. And Vicky Verki, you know, I could assume that being one of the only, you know, one of a few females in, you know, that early time, you know, nearly 20 years ago now, there weren't that many females in kind of like the frontline jobs, you know, air crewmen being one of those, especially kind of in that era of Afghanistan and Iraq. It must have been something quite difficult to deal with, unless you've already kind of got that tomboy attitude towards things that, I don't know, maybe some people can develop. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I'm probably the girliest girl ever out of work. But in work, I am, flanks on, combats on, helmet on. I'm, guess, one of the lads, swearing away in the crew room like the best. But equally, I'm not that kind of like, beer drinking, rugby playing, swilling, kind of what people I think sometimes think females in the forces are. I don't try to be one of the lads. But I am definitely a bit more tomboyish whenever I was in uniform. But as soon as we were on a landaway or a night out, I'm high heels and little black dress girl. But I think because I joined so young, in terms you were saying about taking orders there, I joined on my 19th birthday and I was so naive when I joined. I had no military background whatsoever. I hadn't been in the cadets or anything, and I just went straight in for my levels at school. And I think that naivety was probably my greatest asset because, when you're ironing your bed space at 4 o'clock in the morning for an inspection, you're like, if you were a normal adult who'd been in a working environment and a job, you would be a bit free thinking. You'd probably be like, what the hell am I doing? But I was like, okay, here's another hoop, just jump through it. There's another hoop, jump through that. And, ironing my bed just to pass the inspection seemed really normal. So I think that young naivety, definitely. And I think anyone who's watching this who's got any aspirations to join the forces, I think there's an element where you can apply too young, I think, and sometimes you go in and you've got no experience under your belt and you could be setting yourself up for failure there. But I think if you're a sponge, you're willing to learn and just absorb everything that the military throws at you, then you'll always have a good, you'll have a good tangent on your career. And, I joined because I saw a magazine with a helicopter on the front of it and a guy hanging out the side and went, oh my God, I so want to do that job. I know I was only 17 when I saw the magazine, and then I had tested to the Queen on my 19th birthday. So I was really young. But I look back now and think if I'd have had that classic, well, it's a helicopter. I have absolutely no idea how to operate a helicopter and I don't know how to shoot a gun. I can't do that job. If I'd have had that like imposter syndrome thought process, then I never would have gone for it. And the forces don't expect you or me on day 2 of being in the military to be running around in Afghanistan with a massive weapon or flying around in a 24.5 ton helicopter and operating this massive machine on day 2. They train you up to do the job that they expect you to do. They'll never, I think, very rarely put you in somewhere where you're not capable to be. And I think that's what youngsters looking at as a role going forward need to understand, that they're not going to put you anywhere where they haven't given you the adequate training. Now I'm sure there's people who will disagree with that, but I think in the big picture stuff, they don't expect you to go to a war zone on day 2. So it's a great career for youngsters going in now, I think.
I definitely used to give a little bit of advice to people, especially when they were younger, because I joined up when I did my,
You were
I think
really
I
young,
did,
weren't you?
yeah, I was like, well, what? I say that. I don't know. I think I was 17, 18 when I did my potential Royal Marines course. So the week course before you have to pass a few tests to join the full-time recruit train. And I was 18. So similar to you, really. Yeah. But I believe when I look back on it in a bit of hindsight is that I was too young, or my mental maturity wasn't there. I'd done a bit of traveling, surfing and traveling around the world, meeting new people and things like that. But when I joined up, I was very much a rabbit in the headlights, but a rabbit in the headlights that didn't have I didn't show enthusiasm. I didn't show the will that I wanted to be there, even though like inside I did. So I used to get smashed a lot. I used to get thrashed a lot. I used to get shouted at quite a lot. Told that I was never going to pass out of training a lot.
Yeah.
So when I fast forward 15 years from that point, when I was taking in the Marines, you've got a call colonels department that's in charge of recruiting. So all the adverts, you see stuff on the TV, and they have like a display team that partake in this, and they're the guys that are running about on the TV adverts. And when we had this Look at Life course come through, we had the military like schools come through, and people get like a little bit of an insight into what it's going to be like. At the very end of it, I used to say to them, don't rush into doing it. Go away for a couple of years, go and get a job, go traveling, go meet people, have boyfriends, have girlfriends, have these experiences.
That's also a very good point. Yeah.
Because that is going to solidify yourself. you mentally.
And it's two things, like it solidifies you mentally, but it also, the truth is, when you jump on the treadmill of the forces, I mean, I think we could all agree on this, when a lot of that other stuff in life goes by the wayside, doesn't it? I never traveled, I never did all those crazy things, I never did any drugs, never smoked or anything, I was straight in. And then, as soon as you're in a uniform, you're in a bit of a straitjacket, I think, in terms of how you have to, your military bearing and how you have to conduct yourself. And even on a night out, oh my God, yeah, I've been in London plenty of times in the Army Navy and seen plenty of Marines in dresses. But in general, we all do have a bit of an upstanding in society. We're actually pretty much I think the dapper gentleman at Ascot Racecourse. I think forces people do have this kind of level up in society where they kind of know how to look after each other, know how to conduct themselves, and and you can't just be that absolute knobhead all the time. Whereas if you're a student or a civvy, you can get away with that because you're not answerable to anyone. So you're right. I think maybe do go sow your wild oats, have your great fun around the world, do whatever you need to do, smoke your weed, do all that before you join.
Well, I think it also gives you that maturity as well. So that when you do turn up, that these people that actually are are your instructors, they're actually people too. They're not like, they haven't, there's not this God complex there. Or if they do have this God complex, which you and I know, when people get promoted, regardless of whether you're in a business environment or whether you're in the military environment, people can change because they've got this element of authority now. But you're able
worst
to.
of those, I don't know if you agree, but the worst of those ones, because I've met them all the way through my career, but the worst of the ones that you used to know that weren't like that, the ones that used to be really good people, and then they become like that. They're like the biggest disappointment, isn't it? Like they get up a few ladders on the rank and the next thing, or a different position or role, and suddenly they change overnight. They're so sad to see that. You're like, you used to be a good lad, and now you're an absolute morale sponge.
I used to hate it because I used to have like quite a good set of friends years ago when we were corporals. So like taking recruits through training is kind of one of those examples. Really, is that you work in a team of between four and six people, and you work really closely together all the time. And one of these guys, he was a really nice lad. And then we left the training teams round about the same time. And then probably about 5 or 6 years later, I met him in the sergeant's mess, and I ended up talking to him. And because he was kind of at a higher rank than I was, he was looking down his nose at me, and I was like, and every time I saw the way that he spoke to people as well was very much like, I'm in charge, you're under me. He was kind of one of those guys. Now, don't get me wrong, you don't get taught how to speak to people when you get that element of authority over people. But at the end of the day, there's that human side of it as well. You've got to be on the flip
Stop being
side.
human. Instantly overnight, you have to become a knob just because you put a different stripe on your shoulder. You're like, don't forget who you are first. I think that's the most important thing about any rank, is that yes, you wear the rank, but you are the person, and don't forget who you are inside. It's too easy to think that you've become that rank and you haven't. It's just you're just wearing it.
I always used to make a joke that when you become a sergeant, you get your spine removed.
Yeah, with a lot of officers.
So whenever, like, because I took a hit with my promotion probably for about 7 years, because I transferred over branches from the anti-tanks branch to the PT branch. So when I transferred over, I should have picked up my promotion as a sergeant, but I ditched it and became like a junior corporal again.
Yeah.
And there was there was a lot of that, but because I was like more mature, and I didn't really get spoken to that badly.
Hard to do that. Yeah, I think, again, coming back to like my career, we passed out of basic training after 3 months as a sergeant. Like
Oh wow.
3 months. And like I had been so basically I joined on day one, attested to serve the Queen on my 19th birthday, and then you go into like a 3 month at Cromwell. It's now at Halton, but running around with carrying pine poles and building tripods and all these leadership exercises, because what they're training us is to be junior leaders, a bit like you guys go through junior leader, whatever it is in Brecon Beacons or whatever. We basically are training our air crew to come out already as sergeants, and that's so that if we've got you guys on the back of the aircraft, we've got a bit of authority to be able to like give you the stage 1 brief, which is the safety brief of the aircraft. So we have to have a minimum rank of sergeant. But you know, I was 19 and a quarter years old, 19 and 3 months, and I'm walking around with sergeant slides on my shoulders. And you know, I was still saluting the freaking corporal in the main gate because I had so little military bearing, and you know, I so wet behind the ears when I first joined. But so it's a big ask, and we get nicknamed plastic sergeants in the sergeant's mess at Cromwell because we pop out of basic training when you're all in the block, and then like literally I passed out around Christmas time, and you come back after Christmas leave into January, and you're in the sergeant's mess, warrant officer and sergeant's mess, and all these warrant officers who've been in the Air Force for like 25, 30 years, and we're all cutting around like students with sergeants like on. So I can see where, you know, it does, they're absolutely head in, but it's just the nature of the system. So I think, I don't know if I'd ever been able to be at Cromwell as a warrant officer looking back now, because I think to have to bite your tongue so often would have been quite hard. Yeah.
That sort of thing is quite difficult, though. I can imagine, because I know when I was at the Commando Logistic Regiment up in North Devon, and I remember taking some army lads through sort of like their pre all arms commando training, and then they go away and do that, and 2 years later they were like a private, or you know, just regular cannon fodder soldier, and then 2 years later they come back and they're a sergeant. I'm like, that, how did that work?
Yeah.
I've just like, because our promotion is pretty slow.
Once you get into it, it's very slow. And the RAF have a really poor promotion system. You know, you have to have second. You can't just be good at your job in the RAF. You've got to have all these extra secondary duties and whatnot to get promoted. So I won't go down too much of a rabbit hole on it. But you know, we had one particular year where a chap who I'm quite sure won't be listening to this, but he got grounded and he couldn't fly, so he had all the time in the world to redo the kitchen on the squadron, and got promoted out of it because he was doing this great secondary duty. And it's like, well, that's all fine, but the rest of us are working our asses off out in Herrick, you know, and you just think it's a really poor system. And it just breeds resentment, because sometimes the people who get promoted are not the people who are grafting their asses off into the ground, and the people who are just running at 100 miles an hour on ops, they don't have time to come back and be, you know, champion of the charity such and such a thon, or helping out with this old grannies group around the corner, because they're too busy, and then the people that get overlooked. So it's a really, I don't know what the Marines like. I don't know what the promotion, the way it's done. I think the Army's slightly better, because in the Army, I think you get promoted slightly better on merit and how you're doing your actual job, which is so it should be, I think. But yeah, the RAF, it's not that.
Well, I think the military itself has very much gone down the business model now, where it's you've got to show your extra capacity, so you like work 1 up, 2 up. Whereas, you know, when we or I passed out of training, used to have these little paper documents that you had to CT33s and C2177s to show that you wanted to get promoted, and that, you know, you had to go on like a little promotion card, get that signed off, and you became a lance corporal. And that was like, you could only do that once you'd done a couple of years out of the box. And things like that. And then it was very much so merit based. But then like JPA and you know, the electronic systems came in.
Destruction of the forces, JPA.
And it kind of ruined everything. And that time of what was good about just getting promoted out of being good at your job at the rank that you were in and showing promise. Now you had to show that you were good at doing a corporal's, a sergeant's, a colour sergeant's, a sergeant major's job, you know, to get promoted. And I'm like, well, why do I want to take that extra burden on? I'm not getting paid for it.
Yeah.
You know, and when I look back at it now, and that's kind of why I was a little bit like, when people used to ask me to do stuff, I was like, no, I ain't doing that.
And then if you want promotion, I mean, we used to have the old banter with the people who were, oh, you're a lifer, you're a company man, and you're in it for the promotion. And actually there becomes this stigma around people that want to do well, because you don't want to be licked as that company person who just is like, you know, taking all the extra duties. So it's a really fine balance. And I think it's pretty flawed the way that they do it. But anyway, yeah, could go down a massive rabbit hole talking about that.
Oh yeah, big time. I would like to delve into the tours that we had spent some time in, because we definitely joined up and were part of that. You could almost kind of call it the glory days.
Yeah.
You know, those 14,
slice
15
of time where it was just epic ops all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know it's a very broad question, but how did you find that whole experience? Because before 2000 or before the Twin Towers went down, there's very kind of little going on. There's Kosovo um, and a few things like that, Sierra Leone, but there wasn't really much going on. And then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
it just exploded. And then
And I can remember we were chatting last time about, I mean, I joined a week after the 9/11, a week after the Twin Towers, and the woman beside me, when I was watching that on TV, said, "You're going to be busy." And I was like, never a truer word was said looking back. But in terms of, how did I feel about it? I joined the RAF to do a job. I joined the military to do a job. And I think I'm really lucky with that slice of time I had. I compare it to some of my mates now, and even some of the guys who were joining at the tail end of Herrick, who now, then they had Mali, which was a little bit boring, and then now they're doing nothing. I had an amazing slice of time to be in the forces, but I also had joined, I think, at just a good enough time that when I went on my first Iraq, which was 2003, the war fighting had finished. So I was still going through my basic helicopter training, and I actually watched the Baghdad invasion on the TV in
okay,
my room at Shawbury. I couldn't wait to get amongst it. And then when I went to Iraq in 2003 and 04, the war finally finished, so all we were doing was like routine tasking, and we were going in and out of like Basra Palace and Shuttle Arab Hotel and Shibitha, but a lot of the place, and Alamara was where we held the IRT from. But in terms of getting shot at and threat, there was just no appetite to lose the Chinook, so it was really quite benign then. Now I know that Iraq then went on when we pulled out in 05, 04, 05. It got really kinetic for a while again, didn't it? And it was actually getting smashed to pieces, which made very few headlines because at the time, overlapping, Herrick had started, and Herrick was getting all the headlines, and actually Iraq was, well, Basra was getting flat packed on a regular basis, but I never saw that element. So my normality bar was slowly kind of rising in terms of like a little bit of a threat, getting shot at a little tiny bit. And then whenever, even in the early days of Helmand, there wasn't that many troops in the ground. You guys were up at the top of Kajaki. Bastion was being built. We helped as the Chinook force. We helped build the bastion out of the ground. It was just a desert bowl with a barbed wire fence on the first couple of my debts, and we were all at Kandahar. Lashkar was there, and Gereshk and Sangin, and that was it. And then as the years went on, all those forward operating bases get pepper potted up and down the Helmand Valley, and that's when things started, like it got more kinetic. The stuff we'd say on Merck got more traumatic, and the bullets would be more regular, and IEDs and rockets and all sorts of stuff. So, but it happened really gradually for me. And therefore, I mean, I look back now, and it's one of the things I talk about a lot in the book, and also in my talks I do about that normalizing trauma. I had the luxury, and it's a weird thing to say, but I did have the luxury of like easing into the danger, whereas some of the crewmen who maybe joined the wing halfway through Herrick had been, at university or coming out of school doing A levels, the same as I did. And maybe as quick as a year, maybe 18 months of training, and they were on Herrick, maybe on their first day, picking up torsos and bits of bodies and the stuff that really was the most kinetic moments of Mert. Those guys were straight in, and that's hard. They didn't have that chance to like get used to that. They were just straight in, fresh out of the school, Chinook school, and then suddenly picking up bits of bodies, and near misses with RPGs and rockets. And I think the Chinook force as a whole normalized that trauma and that danger. We used to laugh all the time when you have like an RPG take off like a bit of the blades, and you'd limp back to Camp Bastia, but oh, made it again, that was close, hopefully not quite so close tomorrow, and you go out for more the next day. And I watched videos of you guys. You all did the same as well. We were all guilty of it. You kind of, yes, the adrenaline spikes in the body when you have an near miss, but the first response most of us do is laugh and go, bloody hell, that was close. And you guys got absolutely battered out in Herrick, and you did Jericho before as well, didn't you? And I mean, that was, I think when we were chatting before, you said it was more like a mountaineering expedition, Jericho, I think, actually getting shot at
yeah,
all the time.
Jacana was awesome.
Oh, Jacana, sorry, not Jericho. Yeah, Jacana. But we all normalized it, I think. You could probably sit here and say the same thing. You kind of started to laugh at those near misses.
There was actually points because I was in on Herrick 5. I was in Goresh,
Yeah.
and the FOB price just on the a couple of miles outside the Goresh, and it became a normal thing. Like we were constantly getting mortared, and it just became a normal thing where I'd got so desensitized to it. I remember just going for a coffee one evening, and the the mortar alarms were going off, and everyone was grabbing their helmets and their body armor. Well, I call it body armor. That CBA you could drop a
Oh,
knife
the
on, and
cardigans.
yeah,
Yeah, they call it cardigans. Yeah.
and 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 it wouldn't stop anything, and it had
Wouldn't
like a
even
little.
stop bad language, would
Yeah,
it?
then you got a little CBA plate that was just went over your heart because
Yeah.
the rest of your body doesn't matter. It's absolutely fine, so don't worry about that. So so I got a little bit desensitized to it, and I remember just going for a coffee, and everyone was running into the like mortar shelters, and I was just sat there like that. All right, it's nowhere near us. I can hear it landing outside the walls. I would
Yeah.
only go in there if it was like, you could hear it creeping in, and it never really did.
No, and we used to go to the FOBs routinely, and we'd land on, put the ramp down, and the guys would run out or come out in the quad bike to offload the aircraft or bring whatever had to go back on, and they'd be like in shorts, and they would cut off their combat, so they'd be in their shorts and their flip flops and like their combat cardigans slung on. I mean, this is in the early days, but yeah, it was, and the irony was, it was still even in the early days. Some of the FOBs, like Sangin certainly, and Kajaki was not a nice place to be, but it was just this really like. I look back and I think probably a lot of people maybe watching this, and a lot of your mates will say those were the heydays, because war is not fun, is it? And it's not pretty. But when you're left to get on with it, when you're left alone, almost to go feral and just to get on with the fighting and the staying alive bit, that's probably the bit people enjoyed the most. Whereas towards the end of Herrick, there was so many rules and regs came in. Certainly at Camp Bastion, the hat police arrived, and it was like, you've got to wear your seatbelt. We would routinely get told off in the Mert wagon, because we only had a Mert Land Rover. And then, there'd be senior officers driving around in their Hilux trucks towards the last few Herricks I did, with their aircon trucks on and this, that, and the other. And we'd have this shitty old Land Rover that had no windscreen, because we'd pebble dashed the windscreen and it cracked it. So it had to have the windscreen removed. The doors, we used to make an approach over the top of it to the landing site, and the doors would open on the hinges, and then they just warped the hinges. So we took the doors off as well. So it basically looked like Annika Rice's truck in green. So we would cut around Camp Bastion in this. Now, bearing in mind, we'd fly over the fence every day, and we'd go into RPGs, rockets, bullets. We'd come back, and they, whatever it was, regimental sergeant major at the time, used to go stop us and tell us to put our seatbelts on, driving around Camp Bastion. You're like, for real? Like, honestly? And so we saw both sides, and I think we were quite, it was quite hard to see that, because we saw what real war was like. And then we'd come back to the hat police telling us to wear Dayglow belts and all that crap. Whereas at least I think if you were in Bastion, that was how Bastion was then. So if you were in there just doing a never over the wire job at Bastion, that was just how you lived your life at war. Whereas for us, we saw then the guys in the FOBs who were getting absolutely smashed and coming back to this bullshit rules at Bastion. And it was even harder for them when we'd bring them back to then go an R&R or to have a couple of days kicking around at Bastion. Some of those guys, I'd always stop them going off the ramp and be like, make sure you hide for a few hours before you have to shave your beard off, because the guys would come back looking really feral, and as soon as the SWO got hold of them, yeah, it'd be a different ball game. So I think they were given 12 hours grace or something before they had to smarten themselves up. But it's like, that's war, that's what everybody else is doing out there over the fence.
The thing is that you listen to people and stories from back in the day, like Second World War and Aden and Korea and things like that. And you watch some of the old the old TV shows like that. Ain't Half Hot Mom, I think it was called. Yeah. It was all the same. The discipline and the sergeant majors, the regiment sergeant majors, and some of the officers. It was all very much, you go out there, you do the job, you come back, and then right, you need to be washed, you need to be shaved, you need to be serviceable, you need to get this, you need to do that, you need to apply by these rules. It's kind of part and parcel of kind of the military, really. But I think it is a difficult thing to kind of come back from. So you go out of the door, you're scrapping. Some of your mates have got shot, don't know, they might have done. Someone might get injured, they might not have. You come back, you have a wash, you get changed, and then you're shaved and you go into the galley or to the cookhouse to with everybody else. And
yeah,
it is kind of a little bit surreal, because as soon as you step through those walls, you are no longer in the flag of Afghanistan, you're in the flag of the United Kingdom.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think seeing both sides, that was really hard for us. Worse for you guys. But there is definitely, there was two wars in Helmand, there really was. There was two war zones to go to. There was the one over the fence and the one in the fence. And but I think yeah, I think you learn a lot, don't you? I think you learn a lot about the simple things in life whenever you're certainly out in the fobs. I was chatting to someone about this yesterday about how, I've had more austere conditions in Salisbury playing on exercises than I ever did out in Camp Bastion. We did come back every night. We had a hot shower and we had a bed to go to, which was nothing compared to the guys in the fobs. And yes, some fobs were even worse than others. But you'd be lucky if you got a shower every 3 weeks in some of them. But it makes you appreciate the really simple things in life, doesn't it? Like a letter from home or a fresh orange. I remember putting the ramp down one day and giving out a box of oranges to some of the guys who are at one of the fobs, and they've been on rat packs for like 5, 6, maybe longer weeks at this point, and just having a box of fresh oranges. They looked at me like I was Santa, and it was like really nice to be able to do that. But even giving a bag of meal to the guys and just saying, here's some letters from home. That's what I loved the most about Chinooks, is that my job made a difference. My job absolutely made a difference to people on a day-to-day basis. And whether or not it was taking letters and fresh food in, or ammunition and water, or whether or not it was rescuing their mates and saving lives, I felt like every morning I made a difference, and that was really important to me.
I love the sound of the Chinook. It was always, it always made you feel like whole inside when you heard it.
Yeah,
even if it wasn't coming to you, I remember sitting there one day and I remember we'd gone for about 12 weeks, I think, being on menu B.
Oh,
just the same thing over and over again. And every time the Chinook come over, because you can hear it, you can hear those blades from a mile away. Like even now, I live 1.5 miles away from the Commando Training Center. It's just down the road from me, but I can hear the Merlins come in. Yesterday I was just sat in the field waiting to pick my little boy up from school, and I can hear one now.
Yeah,
it's just coming over the top. You can tell what type of aircraft it is coming over, and I just remember sitting there, outside the tent, and you're like, is it coming here? Is it not? Has the TQ told anybody that there's an airdrop coming in today? Because sometimes you guys couldn't fly in.
Yeah,
that was the majority. That was probably one of the main reasons why you couldn't get any food or fresh rations in or anything, is because the area that we were in was like so hot that every time aircraft came in low, there was RPGs and small arms fire, and we've only got so many Chinooks.
And there was no appetite to lose one, because mentally and like psyops, if you think psychology wise, if the Taliban had taken out Chinook, a British Chinook, in that theater, that would have been monumentally disastrous for the whole British forces, just in hearts and minds. A massive win for them, and how much would that have hurt us really, right in the heart, because the Chinook was the heartbeat of that campaign. So to take one of those things out, especially with a bunch of troops down the back, 40 troops down the back, and one of those goes down. So we were not allowed to go into a lot of places if there was a threat. But that said, when MERT was on, for MERT, for Cat Alpha or T1, we would go in, and sometimes we were held off by the theatre commander until the Apaches soaked the area, or they'd gone in and cleared the area. But there's not a single Chinook crew in this entire world that ever would have not gone in somewhere for someone. If we got held off, we were literally edging in as close as we could until we got the green light on the radio, and we'd go in. That's kind of the nature of it. Was just the most important job that all of us will still say that we did, for a 9-liner. And it was the most frustrating moments where they said, no, it's too dangerous, you can't go in, because every single one of us would have taken the danger anytime. It's worth it to save a life. And it always, the Chinook is a beast, and it can take a lot of battle damage. I've had lots of near misses with RPGs and mortars, and taken lots of rounds to the airframe before, going in above my head, and a AAA round that got caught in the ballistic protection panel that I was stood on at the time, which is pretty lucky. But we were kind of used to it, and that's what our job was, to go and get the guys. And a lot of the stuff I've heard since leaving is that you guys felt safer knowing, like you said, that we were just out there waiting to come and get you if something should happen. So yeah. And there was the odd dust storm as well. There was a dust storm out there. I don't know if you ever lived through one of the dust storms out in Herrick, but my God, it was like something out of the Mummy movie when this dust storm came in. So that grounded everything. And it was just, I remember just thinking, please don't let there be anybody on a Cat A or T1 on the MERT whenever we've got this dust in, because there's no way we could have gone anywhere then. So yeah.
One of the most significant things I take away from Afghanistan and Iraq is it's probably one of the most beautiful places I've ever been to in my life. And you know, you guys get to see it from there. You get to see the scenery a little bit more, and you know, from the ground perspective, pretty much all of the Afghanistan tours I did, because I was in heavy weapons at the time, were all vehicle based. So
Yeah,
you know, I went from having an open topped Land Rover Wimmick that had no doors, windscreen, ballistic matting. We did have it in the end. You had to
yeah,
tape it to it, which was a
yeah,
bit rubbish and wouldn't really do anything, but we did it anyway.
yeah.
Um, you know, all the way up to the jackals and the mastiffs
That's yeah,
at the very end, which were like, you know, life saving bits of kit. You know, I got blown up in a mastiff. You know, it's kind of a claim to fame. I got blown up 23 times, and 22 times of those was in a mastiff, and you know, all that happened was the wheels got blown off. You know, it's like
but
the
it's
old.
going back to what I said earlier about normalizing trauma and danger. Like you do, like it's mad, isn't it? You go, oh, I've been blown up 23 times. Like how many people can sit and say that? Not that many. And yet here here you are chatting, and I'm sure most of your mates probably have equally similar stories. And I think that's where the public don't really get us veterans as much, because we just, we've got this dark sense of humor about it, don't we? Because we've all normalized it so much.
I feel like now, you know, I'm what, nearly 2 years to 2 years the other side of the door now, and um, I don't know if it's a little bit strange. I feel like I'm that Second World War guy that's, you know, he's come back home and doesn't really expect anything from anyone. You know, the things that you've done, the things that you've seen, you know, you've seen 1,000 lifetimes already.
Yeah.
And you're just continuing on the path that you're going. This is quite deep.
You need a stick. You need a cloak and a stick at this point, Ads.
Well, I've kind of nearly got the Gandalf beard
Yeah,
going
he's
on anyway. So, but yeah, when you come to the other side of it, it feels a bit. It's a bit strange because you kind of look back on it and you go, "Look, I did this," and you know, one of the reasons why you've written a book is because you've got all of your stories, your memories, your feelings, and the things that have happened to you before and after and during are all down on, you know, a bit of paper now that you can say, "Look, this was my life. This is what I
yeah,
did." And then similarly, we've had a conversation before about, you know, I'm trying to slowly write a book about all the things that I've done, military surfing, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. So I've got something, you know, that's there for, you know, hopefully, you know, lifetimes to
yeah,
come, whether people pick it up in 10, 20, 30, 40 years time and go, do you know what? That's actually a pretty decent story.
yeah. And
But
write it for you. I mean, I think my biggest fear when because I wrote the book and it was just written for me, it was stayed on my laptop, it never ever was intended to get published and for anyone to read it. And then it was only a mate who encouraged me to send it off. And I was telling you this before, I managed to get published, and then it was like whatever's happened since then has happened. So I never wrote it with the intention of anyone reading it. But and I remember when it came out, my biggest fear was what, like, I'm not special. I have a million crewman mates who all did exactly the same as me, all went to the same war, all saw the same shit, and also picked up dead bodies. And I thought, well, why am I so special? And what if they all think, oh, why is she so special that she thinks she's got the credibility to write a book about this? Because there was always someone who's done more than you, always someone who's seen more than you and been in longer and been to more war zones and got more medals on their chests. And I thought, oh, am I going to get massively criticized? And actually, the Chinook Force were really supportive, because they were like, it's good that someone's cataloging what we did in Herrick. And it's also good that someone now knows what a crewman does down the back of a Chinook, because lots of people thought you just get two pilots up there. And a lot of other people thought, well, we're just door gunners like the army have. And we do a bit more than that, it turns out. So it was kind of just good to put the crewman branch on the map a little bit. But like you say, if you write your book, ads, do it for you, because I'm I don't care what anyone thinks now of the book. Obviously it's really lovely that people enjoy it, and I'm obviously really relieved about that. But if someone asked me what's your favorite book, I would still say mine. I love rereading it, and because it's, I think it's a love letter back to the Chinook and about my career. So do it for you. And that's the best advice I'd ever give anyone to writing a book, is don't do it for the reader, because you'll end up feeling false. Do it for you and do it from the heart, and then it'll always be successful, because people love people. People love humans. So be human.
And one of the unique things about all this is that you've actually gone and done it as well, which is, you know, you stepped outside the box, and that can be quite scary for people. you know,
Yeah.
and being on the, again, you know, going back to talking about being outside of the military and stuff now, it's dare to doing something different, dare
Yeah.
to not, you know, being in the same kind of rat race that people put this kind of, they put themselves in a box. You know, the way that I kind of think of it. Again, you know, I'm probably going to start talking about myself again because I tend to do that a little bit. But I think what I've done when I've left, I've set up, you know, I set up two my own businesses. Um, Setting up another one now. You know, they're not massive. It's just me. I'm doing
Yeah.
everything, you know, but I'm doing stuff that I enjoy doing, and
Okay.
I'm getting paid to do the stuff that I enjoy doing as well. So I don't come home every day, or I'm working a 9 to 5 job in a job that I didn't really want, but I did it because the pay packet was there. It equated to what I was getting paid in the military,
Yeah.
you know, and I come back and I'm living for the weekend again, which, you know, that's
I've had
not
massive
living.
experience with that, yeah. And whenever I came out of the military in 2019, because I was medically discharged, so I came out ahead of what I expected to be, and like it had been all I'd ever wanted to do since I was 19, and suddenly that uniform's not on you anymore, and it's a hard stop at the end because you know you're in that club for 17 and a half years, and suddenly on the Monday I want to go and see my mate for a brew, and I can't because I've got to get a car pass, I've got to get escorted, I've got to go and they'll escort me back off camp, and it's such a hard club to be kicked. It's not like a corporate business where you're just out of the club and you can pop back in for a cuppa the next week. It's a real hard stop at the end. But that first year, I went back to work at this simulator now, a massive Chinook simulator Odium, and it's all singing, all dancing, virtual reality. It's even got a minigun in there. It's amazing. And I got offered a job there with really good money, and I was like, "Oh, it's too good to turn down." And all my mates are going to be there, and it's just going to be like being in the RAF. And I was clinging to RAF Odium like this, like literally with my fingernails, because I didn't want to just let go. And I was so scared of letting go. And it was the worst job of my life. I was about 30 years too young to be doing that job, even though it was some of my mates with the other instructors, they were all at the end of their career. I was still very young. And, you know, I every day I just do it for the money and I couldn't wait for the weekend. And it is the one of the biggest learning points of my entire life is that there is so much more to life than money. I ended up going from that job to work for a disabled flying charity who fly veterans who've got injuries. And it was the most, probably the worst paid job I've ever been on, but my God, the most rewarding. You know, we call it the dream factory. So I think you've really got to, certainly if you're coming out of the forces and you've got a pension, which most of us will have some form or degree, you know, think about what makes you want to be proud to be you, and you know, be able to look in the mirror and be really proud of what you do. So not just about who you are, but what you're doing. And if you can find that passion and purpose again, then you'll be okay. I think it's when you sell your soul to Satan that people start to unravel, because then you're really lacking in that purpose. And we none of us joined on day one because we did it for the money or the lifestyle and the forces. We all did it because we've got the seed inside us that makes us want to serve and make a difference in life. And that doesn't go away. That's still inside you, even when you take the uniform off 20, 30 years later. So you need to find something that gives you that purpose again. And I think what the stuff you do is clearly the stuff you're passionate about. It comes from the heart, doesn't it? And I think that's me with the book now, talking about mental health. It's the thing that lights me up inside. And I'd say for any veteran, you know, follow that passion, make it happen, because, you know, otherwise you will just you'll unravel very quickly, I think, otherwise.
So this conversation direction links up really nicely with kind of the mental health side of things as well, because I think that if you don't do things that you don't enjoy doing, or you know, you haven't really got a passion behind it, and especially when you leave the military as well, it doesn't give you an anchor to do with like your mental health space. You know, for me, you know, before even leaving the military, you know, the reason for this podcast is, you know, talking about surfing and grappling and military stories, but surfing and jiu-jitsu are two of my anchors for my mental health. If I didn't have those, then I wouldn't be doing the things that I'm doing now, teaching jiu-jitsu for a living. And you know, surfing is one of my all-time passions. I've been doing since I was 14 years old. So all my things that my headspace keeps me grounded with that. Otherwise, the things that I've seen and done, and you know, the experiences that I've been there, I think would have probably dragged me down you know, a dark path way well before where I am now. You know, probably
Yeah.
about 10 years ago. So kind of leading on to when you're leaving the military, and probably the reason why a lot of veterans go down and that little dark road in their head and they don't feel like they know where to go, is because they don't have that mental anchor. I use that quite a lot.
Yeah.
I like it as a nice cliche word to use, because you're grabbing onto something that's holding you in place. Um, and without that, I think when people don't have a purpose, a, a personal purpose, then that's probably one of, I'm not saying the one of the reasons why people do, have that.
Level.
I mean, you would know better than me because you've been down that path already.
Yeah.
So, I
That's, and
mean, what
my,
are your
I mean,
thoughts?
oh no, I love that term, mental anchor. It's really good. I've not heard that before, because my coping mechanism was running, and coping mechanism, that's a different thing to a mental anchor, like you say. Coping mechanism was I was burying my head in the sand by just running and running, and that's how I would take how to empty my bucket. The more trauma I saw in Herrick, the more I'd run. And then in lockdown, the running stopped. So my coping mechanism is gone. But the main thing that was gone, and like you said, is that mental anchor. And for me, the mental anchor has always been about that making a difference in helping people. So it's less of a physical activity, it's more of a feeling that I need to be making a difference to someone's life that day. And I obviously had that in bucket loads in the Chinook force, and more importantly in Herrick. And suddenly in lockdown, it didn't really matter if I got up in the morning anymore. And I actually kept hunting for that purpose. So I ended up volunteering for a visor shield printing thing, and did loads of stuff with them for a couple of weeks until that all got shut down by the government, because they were like, no, it's got to be approved PPE. So that all got closed down, and I applied to volunteer with React, which is now, well, it was not React at the time. It's run by an ex-Marine guy, Richard Sharp, I think.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
yeah, so I volunteered to work with them, volunteered to work for the NHS and do one of the drug delivery people. And I just was searching and applying for anything to get me that purpose. And I couldn't find it, and it ended up me that year when I unraveled, and then I developed the insomnia because I had no routine, because I had no purpose, no reason to get out of bed, and it just manifested in this big cycle of no sleep, no exercise, eating really shit food. Went around that circle, and that's when in the August the overdose happened. And I think, I look back now and I think if I'd have been part of something during lockdown that had made me need to get up out of bed in the morning, I probably wouldn't have got down to the point I got to. And I think that's like that for me, that was my mental anchor, and I've got it back again now. And even the last, the 2 years coming out the other side of the overdose and having all my mental health counselling, I was working for a drone company. The book was kind of all bubbling around in the background with the editors, but I still didn't have, and I was still in a really bad place. Like I was still, good days, bad days, mostly bad days. I quit to surfing all the time. I was falling off the board every day and really drowning, and managing to get on the board for like 30 seconds and getting knocked back off again. And it was only when the book hit the streets, and that was just over a year ago, I feel like it's been an upward trend. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and lie. I still have some days where I'm just like, whoop, back in the hole again. But I used to look for reasons why. I used to go, what have I watched on TV? Who have I spoken to? What have I read? What has triggered me? And we all love those words of triggered. What's triggered me? And actually, the truth is, sometimes it's just a bigger wave. You know this from surfing. Sometimes it's just a big freaking wave, knocks you over for the day. Don't try to figure out why the wave was bigger, where the wave came from. Just let it knock you off. Have a day regrouping, and then get back on the surfboard. And I'm so much better at doing that now. But since the book came out, I've definitely got more purpose in life, 100%.
And that's just an inspiration to other people that, if they think about doing something, is just go and do it, and don't be scared of doing it either, putting yourself on that pedestal, and putting yourself out there, which is a really scary thing. And I think if more people did it, maybe, I don't know, skepticism maybe.
I think a lot of veterans suffer from imposter syndrome. I mean, I still do. And, I stand now in front of rooms of like 800 people and give my talk. And before I go up on stage, I'm always going, why the hell would anyone want to listen to me? And 9 times out of 10, I end up with a standing ovation. And the first time I went to a book thing at Yeovil, the book had only been out about a week or two, and it was a book event in Waterstones in Yeovil in a big theatre. And in the green room, when I say the green room, is a crappy little tea room around the back. But Sheila Hancock was there, who's like a huge thespian actor from the UK. And she was chatting away to me, and she said, oh, my dear, are you an author? And I said, oh, no, I'm not an author. I said, I'm a Chinook crewman. And she went, oh, well, why are you here? And I said, well, I wrote a book. And she went, so you're an author then? And I was like, I guess I am. And I still hadn't really got my head around it, and I still don't. And I think most veterans come out into the civvy world and they just really doubt their ability. And they have got so much to bring to the party. You know, I guarantee their CV will look like it's been written by a 5-year-old, but they will bring more to any company than anyone else in that company. But they just don't know it. You know, timekeeping, you know, that military bearing, just being able to command and lead and support as well. You know, both elements are really important in any business, but we're so bad at having that imposter syndrome. And, you know, I talk about it a lot in my talks, and loads of people really, really resonate with that because they think the same. Really suffer, I think, veterans do.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? So, you know, with that in mind, the
Yeah.
the tide of this, the book coming out, you know, you're a year into it. You probably already thought about this already.
Well, I would love to be able to forecast ahead, but I never thought in a million years on Monday I'd be going and standing with like Lorraine Kelly off the TV at the Woman of the Year Awards. I never thought that was going to happen, and that's happened. And I'm kind of just living every week and surprising myself that this actually is my life. So I think where I'd love to be in 5 years, in answer to the question, is that on a red carpet at a movie premiere with Tom Cruise having made a movie. I mean, that's the goal, right? Get Tom Cruise to read the book, make a story about the book. It'd be like Saving Private Benjamin meets, you know, Black Hawk Down, so a mix of those kind of things, because I was so freaking naive as a kid in the forces, and then, you know, went on to Million War Zone. So I think it'd be like a great film. So someone needs to get it to Tom Cruise and under his nose. But, you know, that is the
he might send you a Scientology book back to you, and you get involved in that.
Someone did suggest that it could be called Top Gunner, and I was like, that is far too cheesy. No, not Top Gunner. But I think, you know, there hasn't been a movie made about, you know, I don't know, there's been plenty of movies made about females in the forces, but, you know, there's loads of sexy fast jet movies. Why not make a helicopter one? But it would need to be a big budget, because there's got to be lots of helicopter footage in it, and lots of Chinook footage. But you know, that's, you know, I'm joking half really with that dream, but I just kind of want to keep helping people. You know, for every single day goes by, I get more and more messages about people who it's helped, you know, from talks that they've been at with me. Even I did a podcast come out last night with Big Phil Campion, and someone watched it last night, and I woke up this morning and messaged them that he and his mates have been really worried about a particular guy for a while now, and 7 of them are going to see him this weekend because of watching my podcast last night, because they've identified some of the behaviors in him that I was talking about in my story, and how I unraveled that year. You know, my behaviors changed 180. The girl who ran marathons, like I'd run 16, 20 miles every day, to like not getting dressed. You know, my behaviors changed so much that anyone who was, if we hadn't been in lockdown, people would have picked up on it. All of my mates from the RAF would have picked up on it, but no one did, because I would hit it in lockdown. So the fact that my podcast last night has helped those guys to identify that in that chap, and hopefully he'll go and get help, makes a difference. So I just want to keep growing that mental health message. And, you know, I've always wanted this, I've always had this thing to just keep trying to help soldiers, and it's why I joined the Chinook Force. And I think, you know, if I can keep being a bit of a champion for mental health with veterans, then yeah, I would just want to do that.
Well, you've certainly got the gift of the gab for it anyway.
I don't know about that. I don't know. The audiobook comes out so the paperback comes out in about 2 or 3 weeks, end of October. And the audiobook is coming out shortly after that, hopefully in time for Christmas, which makes me laugh because I have read my audiobook, which means that most people are going to need subtitles to listen to it anyway. So you might as well just buy the book. It's my advice.
Did you put some voices on it when you're talking, when you did in the speech?
I haven't got the skill level or the talent to do that. But you know, there's some quite emotional parts in my book, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done. I thought it'd be really easy to read my own words, and it wasn't. It was extremely difficult to read it. And certainly some of the more emotional chapters, like sort of 3/4 of the way through, I lost a very good friend to cancer, who was another crew girl. And there was only ever 6 of us in the heyday, so we were all really, really close. And you know, her and I had been to Helmand many a time, and then she got taken by cancer. And just trying to get over that chapter was really quite difficult, but I hope people enjoy it. I hope people understand it, more importantly. But yeah, it's been quite some journey.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, the platform that you're sitting on is an awesome platform to you know, push that awareness out. And like you say, if you can be vocal about it, and people are going to listen to you, and like I say, you know, you probably being a bit humble when I say to you that you've got the gift of the gab about it, but you know, you want to, you're an engaging person. People want to listen to you. You've got that kind of voice. You don't stutter and fight like I do sometimes, and I'm looking like out the window because I can't remember these big words to try and make myself sound clever than I actually am. You know, and it's really engaging.
Well, that's kind. It's really kind.
Well, yeah.
I think I also can use, I mean, take away my voice out of this. I've now been connected with so many people in the last maybe 7 or 8 months of just veterans networks that I can now start to pair people up and kind of go, this would really help you. You know, I had a really good call with a mental health, Mountains for Minds, they're called, and they're a charity that do loads of walks, and they do loads of coordinated walks all around the UK. They're quite small, they're only starting out, but they want to help veterans, forces people who are still serving, blue light services, and the fire service and stuff as well. So I've had done so many talks with those people that I was now able to connect a few people up and go, right, you probably haven't heard of these guys, but they really want to help you, and these guys want to help you. And I think that's quite nice, especially a lot of stuff with the Met Police, because they're going through the mill at the minute. So I like to be able, it's nice to be able to be that facilitator, to kind of just be a focal point to then send other people out in the right directions. It's been quite good.
Have you kind of affiliated yourself with any charities or anything like that at the moment, or are you just kind of doing the things that you're doing now, and just kind of, like you're saying, pushing people in the direction of different charities?
Not anything really massively specifically. I'm just trying to champion, I like to champion the smaller ones, but also the ones that I do think are making a genuine difference. I mean, Combat Stress has been really good with me and Helper Heroes, but in a way, they actually don't need any help. They're doing okay themselves, and they've got plenty of other people shouting for them. I think, a lot of these underdog charities who are really small, really niche, whenever the audiobook comes out, I'm donating the profits of that to one of the Paris charities, actually, because I met one of the dads who'd lost his son out in Helmand. And it really hit me quite hard, and just chatting to him, having literally spoken to him about his son, and then he gave me a book that was the diary of his son's best friend, and I read it in a matter of hours. And yeah, so I felt like, to be able to give something back is quite important to that. But again, I just like to be able to support all those people who are trying to make a difference.
Do you follow much on like with the news, with what's going on like in the Ukraine and Gaza, or do you kind of desensitize yourself to that because of kind of the impact it has to you? Do you kind of just turn it off, and not in a nasty way that you
No,
don't,
no.
that you're disinterested, but you just don't want to hear about it anymore?
The Ukraine war hit me really hard. I remember waking up and that had happened overnight, and didn't leave the house for about 3 days. I was like glued to it, like kill TV. And I just remember thinking, oh, it's going to be overwhelmed. I want to sign up again. I want to go. I remember emailing someone saying, like, if you need helicopters operated, I can still operate. And just wanting to pick up a weapon and go type thing. And it's not like I'm a war junkie. I just felt like I needed to do something. And then I realized it was actually really detrimental to my mental health, because it was sucking me in. So this time around with the Gaza thing, I watched some videos that did the round on my Twitter feed on Saturday morning of some woman, which I'm sure anyone listening to this will have seen, in the back of a pickup truck. And it hit me really hard, because I've done my escape and evasion training. I know that I'm under no illusion, if I had been captured by the Taliban, that would have been me. And I think it just hit me. It was just really, in terms of just seeing it in my eyeballs, knew it was having a really detrimental effect on my mental health. So I've tried not to watch a single thing this week about it. I mean, you can't really avoid it, a lot of the stuff, but it just can suck you in. And especially on Twitter, there's a lot of people arguing about, even what the BBC are calling a terrorist, and you're like, it's just all consuming. So I'm trying to stay away from it. And there was an up-pitting documentary about the evacuation of Kabul about 2 months ago. And Afghan is this weird thing for me. It's like the greatest point of my life. And I left part of my heart and soul in Helmand. There's no two ways about it, but it's also the one thing that can unhinge me so quickly. And I watched that documentary knowing that I really, really did want to watch it, did want to hear the story, but I went into a mental hole for about 4 days afterwards. And I've got a book, Escape from Kabul, waiting to be read, but I haven't had the courage to open it yet. And I'm just worried it's going to be a Pandora's box. So I think maybe just leave it for a while.
Yeah, I can't watch anything.
Yeah.
I literally can't. It's not because I'm disinterested, and I kind of got told off by my wife a few months back, because She's like, did you not see this on the news? And I'm like, I don't really want to. I don't want to see all the negative like stuff. I'm not really up to date with current affairs or politics or anything like that because it's just a bunch of idiots
Yeah.
arguing over stuff that's just fucking everybody's lives up because they can't agree on like finances and stuff like that. Look, I'm speaking like I don't have a clue what's going on because I don't.
Yeah.
And the Gaza and the Ukraine stuff. I mean, I know plenty of people that have gone out there to help. I know one guy that's making documentaries and has done, gone into war zones and stuff over the last 3 to 5 years and made films about it and all that sort of stuff. And um, I've watched some of them, but I can't bring myself to watch it because I think humans are horrible
The
race.
worst and the best in society, isn't it? I think, when you look at a war, it does bring out the best in people, but equally brings out the worst.
Like for instance, I know the video that you were talking about that girl who was part of who went to the festival on the edge of Gaza,
Yeah.
and I'm just thinking like all these people that are doing these terrible things, and you can put loads of comments and stuff into Instagram and send them to me. I don't really give a shit, but all these people are doing these horrible things in the name of religion. What's religion? Well, in my
Oh,
opinion,
yeah.
in my
I mean,
opinion, it's a story. Yes, it's a belief. People believe in it and that sort of thing. And yeah, that's brilliant. That's their thing, right? I'm not going to force my beliefs onto other people, but this is a rabbit hole that's going to get opened up potentially. I don't know, but
no, I'm the
um,
same. No, the Gaza thing is a religion fighting over a piece of land. Now, where the hell did I grow up? I've seen that tear my country apart. Religion, people say religion's all about love. Oh no, it's not. Religion tears countries apart. I've lived and breathed it, my growing up in Northern Ireland, seeing it tear communities apart and relationships apart and literally lives apart. So the Gaza thing is literally, it's not quite a cut and paste, and obviously I'll get slaughtered for saying that, but it is, it's still a religious war over a piece of turf. And that's exactly what Northern Ireland is still. And, it blows up like it has done. It's going to hit the news and it's going to be a big story, but it's been bubbling around for, I was chatting to my dad about it the other day, for like 40 years.
yeah,
And it's been bubbling around for thousands of years, really, if we're being honest. But Northern Ireland's the same. Yes, we signed a peace agreement back in 1996, and Northern Ireland, don't get me wrong, if anyone's listening to this and wants to go to Belfast, it is a banging night out. I'm going into about 2 weeks' time, but there's still little pockets of that stuff happening, and but it's no worse than London. You go to London and you see the gang wars in Birmingham. I'm sure it's the same as every single big town or city. And even in fact, it doesn't have to be a big town and city. I'd say every little pocket of community has got an undertone somewhere. It's just how it's packaged up and branded, I guess. So yes, Northern Ireland still has its moments, but in toto, it's pretty good. But yeah, the whole religion thing, I just can't get involved with it. I can't, because I've just seen it. It's so destructive. We have enough religion to fight, but we don't have enough religion to love each other. It's pretty sad, really.
I mean that's the thing with kind of social media and stuff is that because everyone's got a phone these days and all that sort of stuff is really
Everyone's an expert.
accessible. I mean,
Yeah.
like on my podcast Instagram, I follow a few guys that put video footage up and they get video footage from like the Ukraine and the soldiers there and like headcam footage and all that sort of thing. It's kind of cool to watch because um, it puts kind of like the human and being in those people's kind of shoes element. But then on the flip side of it as well, it's just it's horrific what we do as humans we do to each other, and that's coming from a guy that's you know been involved in those kind of situations, and I kind of felt the same way when I was away. I've seen some people do some horrific things
Yeah.
to other people. And I'm like, well, why do you need to do that? Why do you need to go any further than what you actually necessarily need to do? Kind of like your
Yeah.
rules of engagement, right? But
Yeah.
and when you see those sort of things that are visually put in front of you, that's why I kind of choose not to watch it. So I don't watch any
Yeah.
normal TV or anything like that. I choose what I watch through through other avenues. And you know, people might think that, well, you know, you're just burying your head in the sand, but at the end of the day, if I choose not to watch it, then
Self-preservation thing, control the controllables. You know, Foxy talks a lot about that in his talks, doesn't he? To control what you can control, what is within your grasp. And you can't affect what's happening out there. You can't affect I can't affect what's happening there or Northern Ireland, but I can control the stuff that I watch and the things I read. And it's not burying your head in the sand, it's self-preservation. And I think a lot of veterans will probably be in the same wavelength. You know, we just, because, you know, you can get obsessed with kill TV essentially. And I think that's, you know, I sometimes get sucked in. I had a really bad habit, and it was only during my counselling, my counsellor talked me out of doing this. And it's the best thing I've ever done, is that I used to set my day up around watching news headlines. So I'd always watch the 6 o'clock news and have my dinner. And then I'd watch the 10 o'clock news and go to bed. And I realized that the last thing I'm injecting into my eyeballs and in my ears before bedtime every night was usually something really, really destructive, because I would never stay up to watch the good news story. That always is the last thing that goes on the news. It's always all the death and destruction, all the politics, all the bad decisions, how the country's falling apart. And then towards the end, you've got, oh, and you know, Granny has knitted a cover for the post box around the corner or something. And I never stayed up to hear that bit. So I would really be injecting all this negative activity into my brain and then heading off to bed for the night. And so now I don't do it. I always turn the TV off at 10 o'clock and go to bed and read instead. And it's probably a very simple thing, but it's a proper game changer. So for anyone who does the same thing, I would suggest don't watch the news before you go to bed for the night.
Used to call it the shit sandwich.
Mm.
You got the good bit on the top, the
Yeah.
shit bit in the middle, and then a good bit on the bottom. It's like when you debrief someone, you give them a positive point, a couple of bad ones, and then a couple of good ones to finish on, so they don't feel like they're gonna yeah, they've been picked on.
The end of it. Yeah, the old bathtub technique. Yeah. But so yeah, I don't watch anywhere near as much news. Certainly this last week I haven't watched a lot, and I've been really busy, which helps. I think just staying out and being busy, burying my head in the sand, as we said.
Let's finish on a high note. What are you up to at the moment? You've got lots going on. What are the things that you're enjoying doing, and what have you got coming up?
So I'm off to the Woman of the Year Awards on Monday. So nice frock on for that. And then I'm off to Poland on Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm doing the Global Helicopter Defense Conference after that, which is hilarious because the lineup for that is like world leaders in defense, you know, the boss of the US Air Force and British commanders. And then Liz McConaghy, Chinook Air Crew at the bottom, and I'm like, how am I even on there? This imposter syndrome's kicking in again. So that's gonna be mega, because I was booked months ago for that, and I'm going thinking I'm not going to know anyone. It's in Warsaw in Poland, and when the promo email came out and hit the forces, I've had about 20 mates going, oh my god, you're gonna be in Poland. So it's going to become a bit of a reunion, which is nice. And then off to Ireland, then we got up to Belfast to do the Veterans Awards, and then kind of November is really for me mostly about the cenotaph. You know, I'll be going to the cenotaph this year. I was there last year, cried on national TV last year walking past it, because the words "the glorious dead," I can never look at those and not be overcome with emotion, because the truth is, you and I both know it's not glorious dying, and we've seen enough of it. But so I'll be going to the cenotaph and trying not to cry this year, and then kind of rolling into Christmas. So I've got stuff on pretty much every week from now till then, and I'll see what happens when the paperback comes out, because hopefully that's going to be in actual bookstores where you can buy it, because people like Waterstones and stuff like that don't necessarily stock paperbacks of first authors. So my book hasn't even had the chance to go to an airport yet and be picked up by a random person walking past it. So I'm hoping that that'll sort of up the footprint a bit more, and yeah, just living this mad merry-go-round as every day as it comes. Yeah.
Well, Liz, it's been amazing talking to you again.
Yeah.
Let's just hope this saves on my desktop so we don't have to do it for a third time.
I'll come visit next time with the surfboard, because I can't surf. So I'll come learn how to surf, and we'll do it live down there.
Fair enough. I'd be happy with that. Liz, thanks very much for talking to me on the podcast, and I appreciate your time.
Very welcome. See you later.
See you later.